What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Drive Theory. Today, we're going to continue pushing towards getting things buttoned up on the EVO 4. Let's get to it. Alright, so one of the first things we need to take care of on this thing is install this Haltech ECU. This thing is actually pretty cool. So, Haltech offers a variety of different ECUs, each with various sets of features. This is one of their lower end ones, the Elite 1000. They do have, most people you'll see on YouTube will buy the Elite 1500. It's kind of like the middle of the pack. It does most things that you need. I don't need any of the features of the Elite 1500. So for instance, I don't need any of the advanced race features like flat foot shifting or rev matching or anything like that, because I'm not going to be tracking this thing. I don't need any of the like extra 6 and 8 cylinder support that the 1500 and above offers. So I think the 1000 should be good enough for our use case, and it ends up saving me a few $100s there. So we're going with that. But I did end up getting this EVO 456 jumper harness. So basically what it does is the factory EVO 4 harness plugs into here, and these connect to this set on the ECU, and it's just plug and play. There's no you know, wiring or splicing you have to do, which is awesome because, you know me, I hate wiring. It also, the nice thing about the Elite, all the Elite series ECUs is they come with a built-in map sensor. So we do need to run a vacuum line through the firewall so that it can plug into here. So let's take a look at that and see if we can get this thing going. So the first thing I did here was, it's going to be really hard to show on camera because it is tucked really tightly behind here. But if you look behind the stuff back here, there is a little rubber grommet in the firewall, and it's pretty hard to get to, but you can get like a flathead or a Phillips screwdriver to kind of poke a hole in it next to the wiring harness that's going through there, this thing, and you kind of slip a vacuum line in there, no problem. I had mentioned it before, but I'm going to be reusing a vacuum port on the intake manifold that's back here that was originally used for the carbon canister, so we should be good on that front. So let's take a look at the interior and see if we can figure out where this ECU is and how to get it out of there. I did get the ECU out of there, as you can see. It is an absolute nightmare to do. First things first, you have to remove the glove box, and that's pretty easy. You just push in the sides of the glove box and pop the two little tabs off of the rails here, and it just drops down, and then there's two screws, one right there, Phillips screwdriver, no big deal. Once you're in there, and this is going to be harder to show because there's very, very, very little space to work in here, but the ECU is actually mounted, I don't even know how I can show this, like up in here on the left side of the glove box. I mean, you kind of look under the glove box and up, and you'll see it. These yellow plugs here are the plugs for the ECU. There are two 10 millimeter bolts that are, you're gonna have to use an open end wrench to get to them. There's just no way to get a socket and socket wrench up in there. So ideally you'd have something like this, which is a very like tiny stubby little 10 millimeter wrench with a little bit of an angle on it, and it's still going to take you some effort and time to get the bolts out. What's up, everyone? Welcome back. It's a new day. Last night I spent a lot of time fishing that vacuum line through the firewall in the engine bay into the interior of the car for the ECU, and it ended up taking way longer than expected. It kept getting caught on like various wire looms and just things in the interior of the car that made it difficult to get it fed through to where I needed it. So we eventually did get it. So that's all through. Then I'll show you that in a second. So this is what the engine bay looks like now with the vacuum line fed through. As you can see, I do need to put a clamp on this because it's not the tightest thing in the world, but we got a 4 millimeter vacuum line going from the intake manifold through the firewall and up through the other side of the firewall into the interior of the car, and it is connected to the Haltech ECU. The Haltech ECU is connected to the factory wiring harness. Despite the instructions for this jumper harness saying that the Haltech ECU would fit in the factory location, I just don't see how that's possible unless maybe, I think if you took the entire dash out, you could make it work. But there's just no way of doing that without taking the dash out for sure. So what I'm going to do instead, I think, is I'm going to find a way to mount this more securely here. And then I'm going to try to maybe put this in the glove box or something so that when you need to tune it, you can open it and measure. Otherwise, I'll have to like mount this up here or something, which isn't the greatest, but I do know it's a common thing that these old JDM cars did do with ECU piggybacks and whatnot. Like the HKS F-Con and all that stuff. So it's not a deal. I need to figure out what I'm going to do there. But I'm leaving it on the ground right now until we get this thing like tuned, just in case there's any issues with the connections or something. I needed to fish it back out for whatever reason. So for now, we're going to leave it here, but this will eventually be mounted somewhere clean so that it's not in the way. The next thing we need to do was a bit unforeseen. I mean, I kind of guessed it might be a problem, but I wasn't absolutely sure, but it does turn out as a problem. If with this manual boost controller mounted the way it is right here on the side of the valve cover, it does interfere with the hood closing, so unfortunately we will have to relocate that. I think I'm going to relocate it right here on this little hole in the chassis. I need to find a bolt that fits that thread pattern, and then it should just bolt right up with the bracket for the manual boost controller. So let's see if we can get that working. All right, so that worked out pretty nicely. I just took one of the chassis bolts from one of the brackets that I no longer needed, and it removed from further up the chassis to mount this in here. Fits like a charm. Ran the 2 vacuum lines down here. This actually works out better because now the vacuum lines aren't running along this exhaust manifold, and don't have to worry about the rubber, you know, getting too hot and melting or whatever. So the other thing we have to do here is get this battery tray mounted. I had mentioned in a previous video that it doesn't quite line up. The bolt holes in the battery tray don't quite line up with the bolt holes in the chassis. I have talked to, so this battery tray was actually built for an EVO 5 and 6, and they just kind of expected it to work with the 4 too, because for the most part the chassis are the same. And I have talked to people who have owned both the 5s and the 6 who have this battery tray, and according to them, it bolts directly up, no problems. However, I've talked to people who own a 4 and have tried to get this to fit, and so far I've not found anyone who has an EVO 4 that has been successfully able to get this battery tray to fit, you know, out of the box. I do suspect well, for one, I suspect the chassis holes are slightly different. They're not very far off. They're actually extremely close. So I'm thinking maybe with a bit of luck, I can grind out this bolt hole here and possibly this bolt hole here and get just enough room to make it fit. So that's the next thing we're going to tackle. If we can get that to fit, then we are on the home stretch, because the only thing left to do after that is, and I haven't decided if I'm going to do it yet, but I do have a set of Works 800cc injectors, which are more than large enough for what we're going for. That I'm debating whether I want to install before the initial tune or not, or just not, to reduce the number of things that could go, you know, number of variables for the tuner. So we'll see. I'll make that decision while I'm working on the battery tray, and let's see what we can do. All right, so I am super happy about this, guys. With a little bit of die grinding effort on both of the holes on the battery tray, it went in like a glove. Super happy about that. No more issues there. And with that, the only thing really left to do before we can try to get the base tune on this and start this thing up is to install the radiator. So I think I'm gonna do the radiator in another video with the first start. I'm also going to, I don't know, I'm still on the fence on whether I want to do the injectors now or wait till after the first tune, just to kind of reduce any variables in the thing to make sure this thing is running great. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Should I do the injectors now? Should I do them later? The one remaining question though is, am I gonna remember how the hell to put this bumper back on? Because if you remember from the first video, this is the most convoluted bumper setup I have ever seen on a car. It is quite the thing. So on the next video, we'll get the radiator in. We'll try to get a first start going. Assuming everything goes all right with the base tune, we'll put the front bumper on, and we will start planning to get this thing to the tuner so we can get a dyno tune on it. We're almost there, guys. Thank you again so much for sticking with me on this. As I mentioned before, this is just the beginning. We have so much more to do on this car. This thing is going to be epic by the time it's done. I can't wait for you guys to see it. So until then, keep building, keep driving, keep having fun.